You've seen this happen. The loud, confident one in the meeting, quick with an opinion, first to speak, completely at ease in the room, gets the promotion. And the quieter one, who actually knew the detail, who's done the real work, watches it sail past them. If that's ever made your blood quietly boil, this episode explains exactly why it happens, and why it's one of the most expensive mistakes organisations make, over and over again. The trait behind it is extraversion. It is by a clear margin the best predictor of personality for those who become leaders. Read that carefully, not who's good at it, who actually gets the job. I'm Dr. Nick Keca. I've spent over 25 years as a senior executive, running businesses, sitting in those boardrooms, watching this play out from the inside. I also hold a doctorate in organisational psychology, and this is episode 3 of our series on the Big 5 personality model. In the last episode, we looked at the trait that makes someone reliable. Today, we're looking at the traits that make them visible: energy, reward, and social presence, and at the costly, fascinating gap between looking like a leader and actually being a leader. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which of those two you are: the one who wins the room, or the one the room keeps overlooking, and, more usefully, what you can do about it. Let me give you the upside first, because it's genuinely huge. Extraversion is a trait most strongly tied to happiness. Of all of the Big 5 traits, it's the best personality predictor of positive emotion and day-to-day well-being. People high in this trait simply experience more joy, more enthusiasm, more of the good stuff more often, and the evidence on personality and subjective well-being is clear. At work, it's the most consistent personality predictor of leadership across decades of studies. In a landmark review, extraversion correlated more strongly with leadership than any other Big 5 trait. People high in extraversion speak more, act more decisively, project confidence. Consequently, they rise into management, secure status, and get access to the rooms where decisions and money are made. And extroverts are good for teams. They lubricate the social machinery, spark discussion, pull quieter people in, and create a warm climate where it feels safe to contribute. But, and this is the whole point of today, more extraversion isn't always better. That advantage hides a serious catch. The quiet people you've been overlooking may be worth far more than the room currently gives them credit for. Hold both of those truths at once, because that tension is what this episode is about. A genuinely powerful trait and a genuinely costly blind spot living side by side in the same confident person. So what is extraversion underneath the chatter? At its core, it's not really about being loud or loving parties. It's about reward. People high in extraversion are wired to be more sensitive to rewards, status, attention, excitement, the buzz of other people, and to feel positive emotion more intensely when things go well. Think of it as a deeper setting. How strongly are you pulled toward the here and now? Now let me correct a common misunderstanding about this trait. Introverts are not shy and they're not broken extroverts. Shyness is fear of social judgment, and that's actually related to anxiety, which we'll cover in the next episode. Introversion is something entirely different. Introverts are simply less driven by external social reward. The introvert is not frightened of the loud party. They often just find it less rewarding and more draining than extroverts do, and would genuinely rather go deep with 2 people than wide with 20. And remember the golden rule. Think about the trait as a dial, not a checkbox. Most of us sit somewhere in the broad middle of the spectrum. There's even a word for that middle: ambivert. That's most people. Quite probably that's also you. That matters more than it sounds, because almost everything our culture tells a quieter person to feel inadequate about, needing the quiet, going flat at the afterworks drinks, isn't a flaw. It's simply where the introvert's reward dial happens to sit. Go down one level. and extraversion splits into two aspects that pull in different directions. Confusing them costs organisations big time. The first is enthusiasm, warmth, sociability, the easy experience of positive emotion. This is a person who lights up a room, makes people feel welcome, and builds a warm climate a team runs on. Enthusiasm is about affiliation, connection, and it's a side most tied to your own happiness and to team cohesion. The second is assertiveness, drive, dominance, the readiness to take charge, push an agenda, speak first, and speak forcefully. Assertiveness is not about connection, it's about status, influence, authority, being the one out in front. Here's the distinction almost nobody makes, and the one that will change how you read people. It's assertiveness, not sociability, that predicts who becomes a leader. The evidence is clear. It's the agentic, take charge aspect that drives leadership outcomes, not the friendly affiliative aspect. Which means a quiet, reserved person who is nonetheless assertive can lead superbly, and a warm, chatty, sociable person who lacks assertiveness often will not lead at all. Same overall extraversion score, completely different in the one way that matters here. In 25 years of running businesses and working at executive levels, I saw this distinction misread constantly, and the misreading was expensive every single time. Go deeper still and you get 6 facets, 6 dials inside the main dial for extraversion. The first 3 are the interpersonal cluster, how you deal with people. Warmth is the capacity for easy affection and closeness. It sits on the border with our next trait. Agreeableness, that's the facet most associated with being liked. Genuine warmth has a real and durable social advantage, quieter and more lasting than flashy charisma. And gregariousness is the preference for company, crowds and busy rooms. Here's the trap. This is a facet most people think is extraversion, the life of the party. But it's only one of 6 facets, and on its own it predicts surprisingly little about anything that matters professionally. And assertiveness, which we've just discussed, is social ascendancy, the readiness to lead, influence and speak up. Far more than gregariousness, this facet predicts who emerges as a leader. Picture the person who's reserved in a crowd, no interest in being the centre of attention, but who, when something genuinely matters, speaks with quiet authority and people fall in behind them. Low gregariousness, high assertiveness. That's your leader, not the loudest person in the room. The other 3 facets are the energy and reward cluster. Activity is your tempo, the brisk, busy, always on the go pace of high scorers, versus a slower, more measured rhythm. The high activity person genuinely struggles to sit still. Excitement seeking is the appetite for stimulation, novelty, intensity and risk, the most double-edged facet of the lot. It's the fuel behind bold decision making, the willingness to take the leap that others will not. It's also behind the reckless choices, the spectacular blow-ups. Crucially, it varies almost independently of warmth, which is why you'll meet quiet, thrill-seeking introverts who'd happily jump out of a plane but can't stand small talk, and warm, cautious extroverts who love people but never take a risk. And finally, positive emotions, the disposition toward joy, optimism and enthusiasm, does most of the heavy lifting in extraversion's famous link to happiness. Why does carving it up like this matter? Because thinking a role simply needs an extravert is the most common mistake in a recruitment and selection field. It doesn't. A sales role leans on warmth and positive emotions. A leadership role leans on assertiveness. A high-stakes risk environment needs a very carefully calibrated level of excitement seeking. Too little and you freeze, too much and you blow the buck. Hire the headline trait and you'll hire the wrong person. Now, the most important idea of this episode, the one that answers a question I opened with. Extraversion tends to predict who becomes a leader, but it doesn't, to anything like the same degree, predict who's actually any good at it. Those are not the same thing. Think about what gets you the promotion in most organisations. Speaking up, projecting confidence, looking decisive, being visible. These are all extroverted behaviours, and they're on full display precisely when you're being assessed. In the interview, the pitch, the meeting where someone is watching. But the qualities that make someone genuinely effective as a leader: judgment, listening, self-control under pressure, integrity, the willingness to let other people shine instead of taking up all of the available airtime. Those characteristics are quieter, slower to reveal themselves, and far harder to read over the course of a 40-minute interview or a presentation. So organisations select on confidence and charisma, which is selecting on emergence, and then they cross their fingers and hope for effectiveness. That single error explains an enormous amount of the poor and frankly harmful leadership most of us have encountered. I've seen this play out more times than I can count. The person who shone brightest and the person who was best suited to the role were, far too often, not the same person. And it gets sharper because of the way status actually changes over time. Research shows that extroverts grab high status quickly. In the first few meetings, they win convincingly. But that status erodes. As the weeks pass, the constant talking, the not listening, the appetite for the spotlight all begin to grate, and the group quietly reallocates their respect toward the steadier, more consistently competent individuals. The confident person wins the first impression. They don't always win the long game. So, if you've been the quieter, more competent one who was passed over, the research is genuinely on your side. Your moment is usually the second act, not the first. That's the relational dark side. There's also a behavioural side too, and it follows the same curve we encountered with conscientiousness. More is not better. Beyond a certain point, extraversion becomes counterproductive. The most dominant leaders suppress everyone else's contributions. They fill all of the available air, so quiet individuals, often those with better ideas, simply never get heard. Build a senior team made up primarily of high extroverts, and you won't get a powerhouse. You'll get a high conflict environment where everyone is competing to lead, and nobody is actually listening. How often have you seen this in your leadership teams? On the reward side, remember that the engine pulling hard toward the present. Turned up too high with nothing to temper it, the result is impulsivity, overspending, overpromising, taking the excitement risk over the considered one. And there's a principle underneath all of this that this framework keeps teaching us. The dark side of a strength is almost always that strength when it's overused. The confident leader becomes overbearing. The energetic one becomes exhausting. The bold one becomes reckless. Same engine, just turned up well past the point where it serves anyone positively. The difficult part is that the person running away with their own strength is usually the last to feel it, because pulling back feels, from the inside, like becoming less themselves. It's not. It's becoming effective. Let me redress the balance, because our culture has badly undervalued the quieter half of the room. Introverts are not failed extroverts. Reflectiveness, deep focus, genuine listening, the habit of thinking before speaking, these aren't deficiencies. In a world drowning in noise and shallow takes, those qualities are becoming a serious competitive edge, especially in complex knowledge work, where the prize goes to those who think most clearly, not those who talk the most. There's a genuinely positive message for those quieter, more introverted individuals watching. You don't have to become an extrovert to lead or to sell or to be heard. Research shows that people can act extroverted when the moment genuinely calls for it. Turn it on for the presentation, the hard conversation, the negotiation, and then go and recover in the quiet afterwards. That's not being fake, that's range. And the ambivert, the person in the middle who can read the room and dial up or down to fit, often does the best of all, precisely because they're not trapped at either end. Research on sales performance found that ambiverts outperformed both high extroverts and introverts. The extreme is not always an advantage. 2 final practical points. First, like every trait, extraversion only manifests when the situation calls for it. Extroverted leadership is most valuable when things are ambiguous, unclear goals, no map, strategy still forming. That's when the energy and the initiative fill the vacuum and get people moving. In a tightly structured, well-running operation, the situation already provides direction, and high-energy leadership adds far less. Second, and this is relevant to how we work now, remote and virtual work quietly strips the extrovert's advantage. Extroverts thrive through live social interactions, physical presence, energy reading the room, the corridor conversation. Flatten all that into a grid of video tiles and muted microphones, and the channel they've built to use is suddenly dampened. The person who dominated the open plan office can fade on a screen, while the thoughtful introvert who writes clearly and thinks deeply quietly comes into their own. And one finding from my own doctoral research, for anyone building teams, high variance in extraversion across team members, a mix of very loud and very quiet, simply thrown together, tends to hurt team cohesion rather than help it. The popular advice to just mix extroverts and introverts is considerably more nuanced and complicated in practice than it sounds. Composition matters, and so does deliberate team design. So here's your opportunity for a self-audit. Where do you sit? Pulled toward people, action and reward, or toward quiet, depth and reflection? And which aspect runs you? The warmth that connects, or the assertiveness that takes charge? Be honest, because those two create very different lives. Knowing who you are and aligning your life accordingly is your guarantee for success and happiness. Then the harder question this series keeps asking: where does your strength tip into its shadow? Where does confidence become overbearing? Energy become a noise? The love of the new become an inability to finish anything? And if you're the quieter person, are you mistaking your introversion for a limit when it might be your sharpest edge? Quick reminder, as always, this is a map, not a verdict. My aim is to educate, not diagnose. In the next episode, we turn to the trait running quietly underneath all of this, the one that governs how you handle threat, pressure and uncertainty, and that, more than any other, decides whether your inner life is an ally or a trap. Trait neuroticism, the most misunderstood of the 5 personality traits, and the one most people get badly wrong about themselves. If this episode earns its place in your day, like and subscribe so the next one finds you. Tell me in the comments, are you the room owner or the quiet force? And if you want the evidence behind everything we covered today, the sources, the frameworks, a few things we didn't have time for, the companion article is on my website. See the link in the description. I'm Dr. Nick Keca. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in episode 4.